Hi, I'm Keel Johnson. Welcome to Play Politics. My guest today is Vincent Scott. Vincent is a political analyst, a member of the Fairfax County Republican Committee, and purveyor of the website facebook.com/political. Welcome back.
Thanks. Nice to be here, Keel.
Yes. So another busy week
Very.
in politics. You know,
Yes.
we usually
Yes,
have a
ma'am.
lot to talk about, but this week the hits just kept on coming and coming. Most recently with White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer resigning on Friday over the hiring of Communications Director Anthony Scaramucci. Not sure what's going on there. I know Scaramucci wants to improve the way President Trump's team and the media see the president. I don't know how easy that's going to be because Trump keeps getting on Twitter and saying things that are off the wall he shouldn't be saying. What do you think?
Well, it's clear that the Trump administration communication team needed some improvement. There has been missteps in communication and false steps in communications, if not out and out lies in communication,
Right.
coming from the Trump team. I don't know that Sean Spicer's departure is directly responsible to Scaramucci
It's a
coming
mouthful.
on board. Because to be honest with you, I don't believe that Sean Spicer was really that perfect of a fit for that position anyway. He seemed to be a little bit thin-skinned himself and not comfortable with what he was saying. I don't know if he was comfortable with what he was saying, but it certainly didn't appear that he was comfortable with what he was saying.
Or maybe he just wasn't comfortable with what Trump wanted him to say. You know, I think if you're a person who has morals, like I hope that we all do, I think at some point you just can't take it anymore. The reasoning that Trump has.
That's true.
You know?
That's true. I hear exactly what you're saying on the side of the coin of being true to oneself.
Right.
On the other side of the coin, to be in a position in the White House, you have to dedicate yourself to the White House.
Right.
If you can't, you shouldn't be there.
Right.
And maybe that is part of the reason that he decided to leave. The Scaramucci transition may just be the talking point as to why he left.
Right.
I understand from my research that it was a divided house in bringing Scaramucci on and in letting Sean go.
Right.
It seems like Ivanka Trump, the president's daughter, her husband Jared, wanted the Scaramucci transition and wanted Sean less visible. Reince Priebus, on the other side of the coin, was kind of a Sean Spicer fan. So that tells me something just in the fact of who won that. If in fact that disagreement is true, it tells me who has the most leverage in the White House.
Right.
And it's getting closer and closer to Trump's home.
True. True. Well, also most recently, Mark Carollo, spokesman for Trump's personal attorney, Mark Kasowitz, he resigned as well this week. It seems a lot of people are jumping ship. They're bailing out on Trump.
Trump is in a rare position for a president this early in a term, and that we have the special investigator, I guess it's called. I don't think it's called a special prosecutor, but special investigator, who has been hiring attorneys left and right.
Yeah.
Now Trump is hiring attorneys left and right. When you have multiple attorneys representing your interest, they too need to be on the same sheet of music in regard to representing you.
Right.
So I really don't know why the departure. It's his
I don't think anybody knows. It happened so quickly.
It may just be in due course of events, there may be something behind it
Yeah.
too.
Right.
There's just so much going on in this White House. It's hard to separate fact from fiction,
Mm-hmm.
and find where the truth may actually lie.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Trump lies a lot. And he has this spin on what comes out of his mouth. It's hard to know what he is thinking and what he is doing. With the Russian interference, it seems every other week he's saying something different. And now Trump Jr. is saying that the Russian meetings were about Russian adoption. Who is believing that? I'm surely not believing that.
That's a little bit a mischaracterization by the local news. The gentleman that set up this meeting with Trump Jr., the December meeting with the supposed Soviet lawyer,
Right.
which I have yet to determine whether is she a Russian citizen who is a lawyer, or is she a attorney for the Russian government? I haven't been able to separate that out yet.
Right.
But the gentleman that set up that meeting worked with Donald Trump Jr. For the Miss Universe pageant that was set up in Russia in 2013. His name was Aris Arlagov. Now I'm going to butcher some of these Russian names, so please bear with me. But he's the one that set up the meeting with this Natalie, and this is a tough one, Versonelskaya.
Sounds good.
Who is the attorney that's there. Now, originally they say the premise of that meeting was that she was able to provide background information on Hillary Clinton,
Right.
which would be advantageous to the Trump campaign for president.
Right. But was that a crime, though? We have to talk about that as well.
I don't believe it was. Some people believe it was. The word is being passed around, collusion. He knowingly took the meeting.
Right.
He took the meeting under the guise of getting information against Hillary Clinton. But I don't know that that is any worse than if he had a meeting with a Republican senator from New York who'd had something on Hillary Clinton. It's still, what do they call it, a background investigation or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
But anyway, it turned into, at least as the story goes, that there wasn't much information on Hillary Clinton. And what she really wanted to talk about was the Magnitsky Act, which is a law that we passed under President Obama that virtually put a lot of high rollers' bank accounts in jeopardy in the United States. Where the adoption comes in, that was in a retaliation by Putin for the McCloskey Act, which he said, okay, I won't let you Americans adopt any more Russian children. And it's just, it's such an interwoven fabric of story that I think it's kind of died its own weight.
Right.
I don't hear many people talking about it anymore, about him specifically. Having said that, Jared Kushner is testifying Tuesday
Yes.
in a closed-door session of Congress.
Yes.
And I will, since he was in this meeting with Donald Trump Jr., I expect there will be a few pointed questions asked of him about what was said and what his thought the intentions for the meeting were.
We shall see. We shall see. Let's talk about the repeal and replace later. This is another example of Trump saying something but not really saying anything. When it comes to Obamacare, I think the people that it affects the most are the people that have the pre-existing conditions. And I'm not sure why Trump thinks that we as a nation are going to be okay with him repealing and replacing later, because basically we would be dangling on a string. We wouldn't know what our health care is going to be about, you know?
Yeah. As you know, I'm not necessarily a President Obama fan. He did a few things that I think were right, but overall, I just wasn't impressed with his presidency. But I can tell you this, I do think that President Obama was, when it came to health care, the greatest strategist I've ever seen. All we had prior to Obamacare was Medicare, Medicaid, and individual health care plans. Somehow he took, which in that, even in Obamacare, President Obama said we needed to cover 15 million people.
Right.
15 million people is 4% of the population. So for 4% of the population, we have effectively turned United States medical care on its ears.
Basically, yeah.
We've taken something now, and if you search the internet, if you search, read the newspapers, somewhere you're going to find people that said medical care is a right. I don't believe it's a right. I've read through the Constitution. There's not a word about the federal government that medical care is a right. There are very few rights stipulated in the Constitution. Right to bear arms, right to assembly. But even for those rights, nowhere does it say the federal government will support those rights. The federal government is to prevent the impediment of those rights. But somehow, President Obama jumped past determining if it was a right, if the federal government should fund it, jumped over those two elements right to how are we going to fund it? And somehow got the majority of the American people to buy it.
You say it like it was magic or something.
I watched it happen, and I think it was a little magic. It was, there's some people that make things happen, some people that watch things happen, and some people that don't know what was happening. I think the majority of the American people don't know what was happening. But now that we do have the Obamacare and those 15 million that were originally supposed to be helped by it, 11 million actually took advantage of it.
Right.
And so we have people with pre-existing conditions, which is a good thing. Don't get me wrong, that's a good thing. We have children being able to stay on their parents' plans till they're 28 years old. Good, bad, I don't know about all. That's stretching it a little bit to me.
I think it's stretching it too.
But here we are in a position of we're no longer talking about if we should have it, but how we're going to pay for it.
Right.
That was the strategic plan, and it worked. We are on the verge of either single-payer health care, moving, I believe, to universal health care, government provided across the board to all. And that's all well and good. But I think somewhere along the line there should be a national referendum on what health care should be, to what level it should be provided, and how it should be provided. Right now we've had 635 people, 535 congressmen, and 100 senators determine what the entire 323 million population health care is going to look like. It's a little bit too big of a program, I think, to just have our congressional representatives and senators, who none of which really agree on it, coming up with the plans for the options.
And maybe that's why Trump said to replace it later, but still, I still personally don't think that we should repeal it yet until we know what we're going to replace it with.
My understanding of the repeal and replace later is repeal with a 2-year continuance of exactly as it is. So it's not my understanding that repeal would eliminate Obamacare. It would just give it a finite end date.
So you don't think Trump wants to completely get rid of Obamacare then?
I believe he wants to get rid of Obamacare and replace it with something that's still going to be Obamacare-like. That's my point. We've already bought it.
Okay.
We've already bought that people with pre-existing conditions. We've got 10 million more people on Medicaid, low-income people getting health care. We're not going to do away with that. We're not a hateful nation.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. The Trump administration wants, I mean, the Republican plan is to lower the amount of people that are eligible for the Medicaid, thereby freeing up funds in the future. But none of it is eliminating the care that Obamacare facilitated.
And I don't think most people know that, what you just said. I don't think most people know that. And so that needs to be stated, and it needs to make clear to this country that we're still going to have some part of Obamacare. I don't think most people know that. You know? And I don't think Trump wants, to be honest, I don't think Trump wants most people to know that either. You know, I think he wants people to think that he's coming out with this perfect replacement plan. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that works out.
If the Republican plan that currently exists were to make it to the floor, were to be voted upon, if you look at it in depth, it doesn't change much from Obamacare. It changes how it's paid for, not what's paid for. That's the only difference in it. And the Republicans, and especially the Tea Party Republicans, ran for 8 years first of all, the first 3 years, it was repeal Obamacare, repeal Then toward the last 5 of the 8 years, it was repeal and replace Obamacare because the repeal was growing old.
Right.
Now it's just become part of the American medical fabric. It's not going away. They may be able to rename it. They may be able to rebrand it, but it's going to look a lot the same. And we as a country just have to come to closure with that. However, the Republicans are scared to death. All of those who ran on the repeal and replace and had voters that was their single, their single voting point, are afraid they're going to lose those votes. If they were smart, they would turn it around and say, let's do something that's right for the country. There again, I go back to my original comments about maybe we should have a national public referendum on this. To be honest with you, that would get the Republicans and Democrats both out from behind their own self-established 8 balls, find out what the country wants, and
maybe come together and
let them vote on it that way.
Yeah. But that would be that would be too normal, so that probably won't happen. The Paris Agreement. Okay, we're not going to agree on this one, I don't think. So the Paris Agreement, each country would be responsible for doing their part in helping to eliminate global warming. Trump pulls the United States out. Doesn't really give an exact reason, but you think that was a good idea. I want to know why.
I don't know that it was a good idea. I am giving Trump the benefit of the doubt in this one regard. I think he pulled out as a negotiating point. What I think happened is, and Trump has made a few statements as to why he thought something was not right. He said he thought it hamstrung the U.S. in manufacturing and fossil fuel production. A $3 trillion loss to domestic economy and 6.5 million manufacturing jobs as a result of us complying with what President Obama agreed to in the accords.
Are we trying to up Obama here? Is that why he took the United States out of the agreement?
No, I don't think so. What I think he's trying to do in the art of the deal, I think he's trying to get better parameters for what the United States would be obliged to fulfill. We were supposed to give, I think it was $30 billion to the Green Fund, which is the largest, the most of any
Yes.
of the other countries
Yes.
in the agreement. And maybe it's fair, maybe it's not, but you have to understand that we haven't changed our environmental policy, our internal United States policy, one bit. You still have to get emissions tests on your
Right,
car.
right.
You know, people still have to meet emission standards in manufacturing. And when Donald Trump was in France just last week, speaking with the president of France, he opened the door to renegotiating the American element of the Paris Accords, Paris Agreement, if you will. And so I think maybe it was a positioning point. You know, a whole bunch of pomp and circumstance, and nothing really changed, except maybe we'll pay less and do the same. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not taking the point of we got to get out of the environmental game,
Okay.
but I don't believe he is either.
He's the same person that said that global warming didn't exist.
Did he?
He did.
Okay. Well, see,
Because I remember laughing when he said that.
I know that he has a concern that the contribution that we're making to it is less than a lot of the global warming advocates state that it is. If he actually said there was no global warming, well, then he's just not looking at science.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's clear there is global warming. Matter of fact, we're in our third wave of global warming since since history's been able to track the such. It's the contribution that man's policies contributing to the global warming is what would be the question, if any, if I were making the debate.
Right. Okay. Well, I think we've squeezed out all we can with that. So, so with McCain and his recent illness, and I do hope that he gets better quickly, how do you think that's going to affect what we're trying to do with the health care bill?
Well, John McCain hadn't committed as far as the Republican health care bill. He was in the has concerns category. To be honest with you, I don't believe his illness and being away from the Senate will have much effect at all, because I don't think it had a snowball's chance of passing, regardless of if he were there or not. There's at least 4 senators that are hard-nosed, and it only takes 2 to squash it.
Right.
So, in the form of that it is now, going back to Trump saying, okay, well, if you can't give us something to replace it, give me the repeal with the 2-year window for replacement, thinking, I believe, that it would hold everyone's feet to the fire, that you've got to do something. Right now, the Democrats don't feel they have to do anything because they've got Obamacare, and they admit it's flawed, but they can work around the edges. The Republicans don't really have to do anything because they've got Obamacare, and they can all say that the Democrats have been prohibiting them from doing anything. So right now and the public has Obamacare, so there are people that are covered. Everybody's kind of in a symbiotic state right now. If there isn't an end date to Obamacare, why would there be much emphasis put on any further negotiation and debate?
Well, I think because the American people want to know where we stand with the health care bill. You know, it's just the uncertainty, I think, of not knowing what's going to happen going forward. So.
Well, there's going to be a continued. The problem is there's going to be a continued uncertainty unless the Republicans say, "Uncle,
Which I don't think they're going to say.
We're going to
but-
accept Obamacare,
Yeah.
and we'll work with you Democrats to make it better."
It won't happen.
I mean, even if they, because it will always be out there, hiding in the
Right.
bushes,
Right.
because a lot of people ran on that. They've either got to define it or end it. I don't think there are any.
There's no
Two
happy,
other- there's
happy
no two
medium
option,
in
exactly.
between.
Unfortunately, but the politicians and the political bases have set themselves up for that. Don't know how to get around it.
Oh, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Let's talk about former Vice President Al Gore, the author of The Inconvenient Truth. I don't know if you saw that the news. He was originally open-minded about Trump, and he has said that Trump has undermined our alliances. Example, the Paris Agreement. He also said that the assault on our democracy, headed by Vladimir Putin, all of these things that go into play with everything that's going on. Do you think more and more of Trump's team is going to start bailing out because of the decisions that he's making? And how do you think that's going to work? Will he get more people or different people to be on his team? And do you think that he feels that this looks really bad for him as a president, to not even have his own team believing in him? Of course, he's going to have Kushner. That's his son-in-law. But I wonder how he feels about that.
First, as I mentioned earlier in the show, if you're on his team and you don't believe in what he's doing, you should get off his team.
Right. Well, if you're not loyal, he ends up kicking you off his team.
As he should.
Yeah.
Now, is he going to see the ramifications politically of all of this? I don't know. He hasn't yet. You know, the president, as public of a person, as public as a position as he is, or one day she is, that is still a very isolated position when it comes to being in the Oval Office.
Yeah.
He has a handful of dedicated advisors. One of them just left, Sean. But he's still got Ivanka, he's still got Jared, he's still got the folks that came to the White House with him. You know, there's a difference between hearing an order and saying, "Aye, aye, sir," and carrying it out, than contributing to the development of that order and not giving the president the counsel that may be against what he believes.
But that would help him.
That would help him.
Right.
And that is where I don't know what's breaking down. Nobody can possibly be counseling the President of the United States that all of those Twitter tweets are good for him.
Right. And we're going to have to actually end on that. Unfortunately, we are out of time, so I would like to thank you for joining me for Play Politics, and I hope to see you soon. Take care.